Genesis chapter 28, talking about Jacob. Now, hopefully you know already the story. Jacob is a heel holder. That means he is a supplanter. It means he takes the place of someone else. It's not his place, like someone is sitting on a throne and you want that place on his throne. You will supplant that person and take his place. That's what Jacob was from the time he was born. He was a supplanter. He wants to take the place of someone else. And we know he wants to take Esau's place in both the blessing and the birthright. Okay, so we won't go over all of the history of Jacob and Esau and everything that happened, because I think you already know what happened. Alright? But you know he made Esau very angry. And about this time, Isaac's brother Ishmael dies. And so Jacob and Esau think that Isaac will soon die also. So Rebekah says to Jacob, just go away a few days and let Esau's anger, let him cool down a bit, and then you can come back. So Jacob says, okay. So he leaves to go to his relative's house, Padan Aram, Haran. Alright, we're going to begin in verse number 13 of Genesis chapter 28. It says, and behold, the Lord stood above it. So we know he had a dream. Let's begin verse 12. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth. And the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. So Jacob, he's running away. He's on his way to his in-laws, or to his mother's family, his relatives. And he's scared for his life. He finds a place to lie down to sleep for the night. It's called Luz, later called Bethel. And he takes some rocks for his pillow. He lays down and he goes to sleep. And then he's in fear for his life. He's running for his life when he has this dream. And he needs some reassurance from, let's just call him God, because he really does not know God at this time. And then we come to verse number 13. In this dream it says, verse 13, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. Now that's an introduction. God says, you don't know me, but your grandfather knew me, Abraham. Jacob, you don't know me, but your father Isaac, he knows me. The one that Isaac talks about, that's me. The one that Abraham talks about, that's me. I'm that God. But Jacob, you don't know me. I am not your God. See the problem? It says, and the land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. It says, so he says, hey, guess what, Jacob? The land where you're on now, I'm going to give this to you, and it will be your land. The title of this message is he your God? Is he your God? Alright? Because we're going to find a pattern in Jacob's life where it was never about his God for a while. Okay, now at this time, Jacob is lost. He's not a believer, not saved, I do not believe. He's a lost man, he's carnal, and he's a supplanter. He's a deceiver. He's tricking and lying to his dad and to Esau and doing everything he can. It's about what he can get, not about what he can give to God. So God says, hey, I'm your grandpa's God. I'm your father's God. I'm not your God. But why don't you get to know me? And when you do, maybe I will be your God. It says, and Jacob rose up, verse number 18. Jacob gets really afraid and scared in this dream. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had for pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. And the name of that city was called Luz at the first. Now let's take a look at this vow carefully. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me. Alright, so this is a condition. If God does his part, I will do my part. We call that a contract. Okay? Call that a contract. If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat, That's 3 conditions. And raiment to put on. That's 4. So that I come again to my Father's house in peace. That's 5 conditions, if you're counting. Then shall the Lord be my God. Alright, because right now, remember, God is not Jacob's God. Jacob is the God of his grandfather and his father. God is not Jacob's God. Jacob says, I know that you should be my God. So if you do 5 things for me, then I will give you the privilege of being my God. That's not how it works. Alright? We don't get to bargain and make a contract with God. We don't get to go and make deals with God and say, God, if you give me this, if you make me rich, if you make me happy, if you give me a good family life, if everything's comfortable with a nice job, well, then maybe I'll throw you a bone. Okay, we don't get to do that. We don't make deals with God. Okay, and God does not enter into contracts with us. Okay, now you can say, well, what about salvation? That's not a contract, that's a covenant. Okay, a contract is you do your part and I will do mine. All right? If you don't do your part, then I don't do mine. Okay? For example, don't get mad at me, but let's say Duterte says, you guys, if you stay home, I will give you free food. Free house, free car, free boat, everything free the rest of your life. Never have a problem again. And then Duterte does not give you a free boat, a free yacht, a free food, a free house, free everything. That contract is now broken. You may now leave your house and break the quarantine. It's a contract. Unless both parties keep the agreement, then the contract breaks and it's null and void. Will not stand up in court. It's broken. God offers us a covenant. That means God says, I will be faithful to you even if you are not faithful to me. Okay? Marriage is not a contract. It's a covenant. It means I will love my spouse whether she loves me or not. I will be faithful to my spouse whether that spouse is faithful to me or not. I will treat my spouse right even if my spouse does not treat me right. Okay? That's a covenant. And a lot of Christians today, they see our walk with God and enter into a covenant relationship. Like the Abrahamic covenant. Okay, but a lot of people, they see it as a contract. Okay, God, I'll give to you if you let me get. Give to get. You see that a lot from the Pentecostals. And a lot from the modern day Baptists, unfortunately. God, I'll give you 10% if you give me 20%. I'll give if you give back. That contract. The idea is I give to get. Jacob, as a lost man, that's his mentality. That's his thinking. He wants God to give. He doesn't care about what he can give to God. And then verse 22. It says, and this stone, which I have set for a pillar, shall be God's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, here comes. So here's Jacob's part. I will surely give the 20th, no. A fifth, third, no. Half, no. A tenth unto thee. Look how generous Jacob is. Can you imagine God, who had just introduced himself to Jacob, says, hey, I'm the God of Abraham and of Isaac. Now, if you know anything about Abraham and Isaac, these are rich. These two are both rich and powerful men. And so obviously God is richer than Abraham and Isaac. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns the hills that those 1,000 cattle feed on. God owns everything. Do you think that God is broke? He's going bankrupt and he needs Jacob to help him with his finances? It's nonsense, right? But in the mind of Jacob as an unbeliever, as a lost man, that's what Jacob's thinking. God, you need my 10%. Well, I'm going to help you with my 10% if you can keep these 5 conditions. Now, that is the nonsense of the unregenerated, of the lost man. Okay? This is the wrong approach to God. And you might say, well, Jacob, what a fool, you know? What a deceiver, liar. See, to a thief, every man is a thief. Okay? To a deceiver like Jacob, everyone is a deceiver. If you're a player, everyone else is a player. If you're a hustler, everyone's a hustler. So to Jacob, God was like him. He saw Jacob or he saw God as he kind of sees himself. Everyone's out there. Everyone's playing the game. Everyone's trying to get the most for themselves. And so Jacob says, God, the most you will ever get from me is 10%. So God, you do your part, and you will get my 10%. Okay? Now, we know that God was not up there in heaven, going through his, stack of bills and looking at his bank deposit slips and saying, whew, I could sure use 10% from Jacob. I'm going broke up here. Heaven's expensive. Not doing that. Okay? So Jacob is in an unregenerate mind. He's lost. Okay, now, Jacob goes to Padan Aram. He marries Rachel and Leah. And he works for Laban. Now let's skip to Genesis chapter 31. He has at least 13 children, 12 sons, 1 daughter. And let's skip to chapter 31. And so Jacob has been working for Laban for a long time now. I think it was 21 years. It says in verse number 3, so Jacob and Laban are starting to have a falling out. Laban's looking at Jacob saying, Jacob, you're kind of a swindler. I've noticed things about you. All right, verse 3 of Genesis chapter 31. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. He's still the God of Jacob's fathers. Not Jacob's God. Verse 5. Jacob talks to his 2 wives and said, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. God is not Jacob's father, or God is not Jacob's God. He is still the God of his fathers. Sometimes Christians, when they get saved, it's like God is some sort of distant, far-off thing. He's some sort of inanimate object. He's just something that's way off, almost too far for you to even notice or see him. That's the God of ancient times. That's the God of my great-great-grandfathers, the God of my father. And Jacob is seeing God that way. Now let's skip down to verse 13. God speaks again to Jacob and says, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Here, who is this God? Is it Jacob's God? No, he says, I'm that God you talked to in Bethel. I'm the God of Bethel, not your God still. Remember you vowed a vow to me? Remember we talked? You had a dream, ladder, angels, up, down. Remember that? Jacob's going, okay, yeah. Yep, God of my fathers, God of Bethel. I get it, yep. Says, now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. God is still not Jacob's God. Skip down to verse 29. So 20 years goes by. 20 years. Still, he's been serving Laban. Still not Jacob's God. We could say he's still not a believer. Verse 29. Laban gets mad at Jacob. They have a big fight. And then Laban says to Jacob, it is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. Laban said, I could really hurt you, Jacob. I could really hurt you. He says, but the God of your father. Whose God? Not Jacob's God. The God of his father spake unto me yesternight, saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Still not Jacob's God. Still the God of his fathers. Alright? Now there's some people, they grow up in church. They have Christian parents. Maybe some of you, maybe 1 or 2 of you here today. You have Christian parents, Christian kuyas, Christian ates, Christian cousins, and you've understood and you know the Christian culture. Culturally, you're a believer. Culturally, by your culture, you're a Christian. But have you truly been saved? Have you truly been born again? You know how to sit in church. You know the hymns. You know the songs. You know how to behave yourself in the church. You know how to dress right. You know the right words. You know the vocabulary. You know how to act saved, look saved, smell saved, sound saved. but still you're not saved. It's still the God of someone else. You have never been regenerated. That's where Jacob is in his life. You cannot be born saved. No one is born a Christian. When you get saved, no one's baptized as a Christian. When you get saved, it's something where you take from someone else. Maybe your parents, like Jacob. Or maybe a cousin. Or maybe a classmate. Or maybe an evangelist came to your town. Whatever it is, or your pastor. And you heard about his God. And you said, I will take that God. And I will take him and put him on. Like a shirt. I will put him on for myself. He's now my God. Not just say, yeah, I accept, like Catholics, they're born Catholic, Catholic by blood, die a Catholic. That's not how Christianity works. We each must make a personal, individual decision. Here, Jacob did not make that. Let's get down now, same chapter, chapter 31, verse number 42. 42. Except the God of my father. Yeah, that's where it says, I've served 14 years, 20 years, verse 42. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, not his God, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. So Jacob says to Laban, he says, you know, Laban, you would love to hurt me. Don't act pious. Don't act like, oh, but I'm such a godly man, I'm so forgiving and loving, I won't do it. Jacob says, no, you would hurt me if you could, but you're scared of the God of Abraham. You know what the God of Abraham is capable of. We should have that God in our life, where people who are lost, unbelievers, others would see that God and say, I don't want to upset his God. I don't want to stand before his God at Judgment Day and have to explain to that God why I should be allowed to come into his heaven. I don't want to be in that position. I want to become a member of his family, part of his God. I want to put his God on for myself. Laban was scared and feared the God of Abraham, but not the God of Jacob. Laban wasn't scared of Jacob. If God came and said, hey Laban, I'm the God of Jacob, don't touch him, Laban would say, who are you? I did not know Jacob had a God. Jacob didn't. Skip down to verse 53. It says, the God of Abraham. So they made a covenant, made a pile of stones. You don't come on this side, I won't go on your side. This is the line. Let's split ways forever. And they did. And they said, the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judged betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Alright? Jacob couldn't say, I promise you by my God, I will not. Jacob didn't have a God. No one cared about God. That meant nothing to anyone. If Jacob said, I swear upon my God, that would have been laughed at. Now, let's get to the point and think about these 5 conditions that Jacob wants from God. Remember, bring me back home to my parents, give me food, go with me in the way, yada yada, 5 things. These are the conditions in Jacob's mind, and now Jacob is on his way back, chapter 32, verse 1, he's on his way back to be with his mom and dad. Chapter 32, verse 1. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host, and they called the name of the place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. Now remember, Jacob, last time he was home, 20 years ago, Esau was thinking about killing him. That's why Jacob had to leave. So Jacob, it says, verse 4, and he commanded them, saying, thus shall ye speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob saith thus, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed there until now, and I have oxen and asses, flocks and manservants, and women servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find grace in thy sight. Okay, so Jacob says, hey, I want you to go and tell Esau, hey look, I'm your servant, you're my lord, you're the better brother, I'm sorry for everything I've done. Jacob sends the messengers. The messengers come back. Verse 6. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee. Oh, that's nice. Until you see the next part. And 400 men with him. Oops. Jacob's got a very big problem now. Esau's coming with 400 soldiers. And Jacob's thinking, well, Esau was going to kill me, planning to kill me last time we met, last time I talked. And now here comes Esau. He's really going to kill me. He's got the 400 soldiers. And now Jacob realizes he is going to die. His wives and his children are going to become slaves, and maybe they also will die. Okay, this is not fake like the coronavirus. This is a real threat. Verse 7. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. And he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and herds, and the camels into 2 bands. Then this terrible what Jacob had to do, and said, if Esau came to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. Now think about Jacob's state of mind here. He's terrified, and think he has to split his family into 2 groups. He says, if Esau attacks one group, at least 50% of my family will be still alive. Jacob knows, I'm going to die tomorrow. This is the last night on this earth. And he believes at least half of his family will die, maybe all of them. Verse 9, and Jacob said, this is the night before, he said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. He says, okay, if there really is this God that's met with me, this God of my grandfather, the God of my father, Abraham and Isaac, I'm speaking to you now. And look what Jacob says. This is his, I believe this is his salvation prayer. This is where he gets saved. He says, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies. Where are Jacob's conditions? No more conditions. Jacob says, okay, now God of Abraham, remember those 5 conditions, and you're going to get 10%. I might just raise it to 15%. I might just bring it down to 3 conditions. Jacob doesn't do that. Nothing about conditions, no deal making, no contract, no signing on the dotted line. Jacob says, I'm worthy of death. I don't deserve to breathe. I don't deserve to live. I'm not worthy of the least of all the mercies, and of all the truth with that which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 bands. Jacob says, when I cross over here, I just, me and my stick, my staff. And now as I come back, I've got so many people, family members, sheep, ox, asses. He says, I had to split them up into 2 bands, like 2 groups. I've got a lot, God. You've given me a lot of blessings, and I am worthy. I deserve not even the least. You've given me so much. I've never made you my God. I've never given you 10%. I've given you nothing, and look at what you've done for me. You've given me all. Jacob says, verse 11, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. So he says, God, come and save me and my family. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been a bad guy. But this is where Jacob wants to put on the God of his fathers and put it on to be his God. And thou saidst, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. But he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau, for his brother. So let's get down to verse number 24. So he sent to everyone, all of his family, everything across the brook. It's the night before. Verse 24, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. So here Jacob was, he's in his tent, he's alone, he's praying to this God of his grandfather, and then here comes a man in his tent, and Jacob realizes, hey, this is the guy. This is the God that I don't know. This is the God of my grandfather. I believe it's a Christophany. It's a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. And Jacob realizes that. And so Jacob wrestled with him all night. Now, is it because Jacob is a good wrestler? Is it because Jacob's almost as strong as an omnipotent, all-powerful God? No. Could God have just, in a thought, in a breath, in a moment, in a word, just had Jacob go flying through the side of the tent? Sure, he could. But God wanted Jacob to wrestle with him. God wanted Jacob to hold, and that wrestling isn't a matter of, hey, let's, go like this, and they're punching each other in the face. It's not that kind of wrestling. It's, oh, I'm caught in your tent, I better get out of here. And that's what God wanted Jacob to do, is to see him. And so Jacob held on. And Jacob says, I'm not going to let you go. All night, Jacob didn't sleep. He says, I will not let you go. Why? I want you to be my God. I'm taking you, I'm pulling myself, I'm pulling you towards me. Be mine, be my God, save me. That's a moment where Jacob took that God of his grandfathers and made that God his own. It's when he got saved. When I was 9 years old, I was born into a Christian family, Christian mom, Christian dad, Christian older siblings. But there's a point in my life where I heard the gospel, I was convicted, and I said, I need to take this God of my parents, and I need to make him mine. And I held on to that God. And I said, Lord Jesus, save me a sinner. I don't deserve to be in your family. I took him as my own. And there Jacob, it says he wrestled with him till the breaking of the day. All night. God says, oh, I got to go. And Jacob says, no, I want you to be mine. Don't be the God of my grandfather anymore. Not the God of my father. You will now be my God. I want you to be my God. I want you to be mine. No more 5 conditions. Nothing talking about 10%. Now Jacob says, I will give you 100%. And when he saw, verse 25, that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. Touched Jacob, and Jacob's thigh shriveled up. Extreme pain and agony. And Jacob says, even though I'm in pain, I'm sleepy and I'm tired, my muscles hurt, and now my thigh is in total, utter agony and pain, I will not let go. I want you to be my God. And he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob, heel holder, supplanter. Not a good name to have. Jacob is not a good name. I mean, if your son's named Jacob, that's good, because now we know what Jacob became. But at that time, that's not a very flattering name. Verse 28, and he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. Jacob prevailed. So, that's why we call him Israel. That's where we get the country name Israel. Children of Israel, the Israelites, from that new name, because like a prince, they have power with God. So what happens after that? So we know that Jacob says, okay, if you bring me back here, then will you be my God. And those 5 conditions. And then he says, now let's go to chapter, sorry, usually I'm using my cell phone Bible, but I can't do that. So I'm using my laptop version Bible here, where he goes back into the land. If you guys can find it, let me know. There it is. The next chapter, for chapter 33, Genesis 33. It says, verse number 19, and he bought a parcel of a field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And he erected there an altar, and he called it El Elohe Israel. El Elohe Israel. So he went past Esau, he went into the land, and he erected there an altar. And he says, this is El Elohe Israel. And that means the God of Israel. That's Jacob. Jacob raises up an altar and says, God is now my God. I put this monument, this altar up, and says, I want everyone to know It's not God of my grandfather anymore. It's not God of my father anymore. God has protected me. He has delivered me. There's no more conditions. He's my God. El Elohe Israel. What have you done to show to the world that He is your God? Because, well, I got saved. Well, do people know what it means that you've got saved? Do they know? Do they understand that when you got saved, you made God as your God? That you repented and believed? And that they need to do the same thing? Have you shared to them with your testimony? Do they understand what it means that He is your God, that you're saved? If not, you maybe have, for some, maybe you've never got saved. God is still the God of your fathers and your grandfathers. And one day He will be your judge to send you to hell. And if you say, no, I'm saved, I'm saved. Are you saved, and have you built that altar? El Elohe Israel, have you said, yes, He is now my God? And told all the people that you know, people in your school, people that you work with, people in your neighborhood, can they say, oh, that person, that guy, that girl, their God is the God of the Bible. He's told me about their God. She has told me about their God, what their God did for them, how their God saved him, how their God saved her. Have you shared with them and told them what it means that you are a believer? What it means that you've been saved? If they don't know that, you could say, well, I got baptized. Do they know what it means? Do they know what your baptism symbolizes, what it represents? It's not enough that they know that you've been baptized. They need to know what happened for you to get baptized. So we need to be like Jacob, and that first we need to get saved and put our own God to be for us. And you can say, well, I'm saved and everything, about the God of my grandfathers, that's all good. But you need to make it personal and individual and live that life that God is your God. And then to build an altar and to say, I will show all those people out there, all those that will listen to me, I will declare to them who my God is, what my God has done for me, and what God can do for them too. Until you've done that, unless you've done that, you're lacking, you're missing, and you will not have that power with God that a prince has with the king. Like Jacob had as a prince, he had power with God.